Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the weekend wrap. No production, just my thoughts. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. So the weekend started from early. We had a Friday night special technically. I guess it started from Thursday because Osleys Iglesias did fight on the Thursday. Didn't get a chance to see the fight. I think it was a Pro Box one. I'll probably try and check it out at some point later on today. But yeah, it's been a full Saturday and an even fuller Sunday currently. So I'm not in the greatest of ways. I need a solid night's sleep basically. But with that being said, gotta kind of go through the weekend, some of the talking points, and yeah, just quick look to see what's kind of going to be going on like next week. But first things first, let's move on to basically what happened on Friday. There wasn't like a huge amount of talking points as such, like everything pretty much went off the way it was supposed to, but we did get the debut of Keon Davis, who is Keyshawn and Kelvin Davis's youngest brother, or at least the youngest boxing brother currently. Made his professional debut on the Top Rank card. I think he faced a guy called Jalen Moore, sorry. He won a unanimous decision. I think Jalen was like 1-1. So yeah, so Keon Davis is now 1-0. Congrats to him. Kelvin Davis, he won his fight, obviously. Wasn't really much to talk about. Unanimous decision. Kelvin's a cool guy, but nothing really special about him. 140 pounds as such, is what it is. The biggest talking points probably from Friday came at the hands of Abdullah Mason against Johan Vasquez. Now, this has to be in contention to be like round of the year, the very first round. Basically, Abdullah Mason, he won the fight, second round KO, but in the first round suffered a very, very big crisis of career where he, teeing off on Johan Vasquez, but not being defensively responsible, trying to lead with lead uppercuts from the left hand side, so obviously from that southpaw stance. He got caught and he got dropped. And he got straight back up. Legs was fine. Chin didn't seem worried. He didn't seem like he was spacey. But, flash knockdown, maybe. But it was a, heavy drop. He then comes out, gets back into the fire with Johan Vasquez. But Vasquez is still managing to catch him from time to time. But then, Abdullah Mason catches that. It was that straight. I think it was a straight backhand from that southpaw stance. And Vasquez ends up going over. I think he ends up rolling his ankle as well. He could barely put weight on it as he got back up. But then Abdullah Mason goes back in, rushes to get the finish again. Boom, gets caught with a counter left hook, hits the canvas again. He gets straight back up again. So you could say it may have been a balance type issue, but he got put down, and it was a heavy knockdown, even though he seemed clear senses afterwards. Then that ended up being the end of that round. But then in round two, rather than trying to measure it, he basically just goes back into the fire. He says, well, I guess in his mind it was, well, the worst has happened to me already. You can't really do much else. And at this point, like, Vasquez was pretty much out on his feet. Like, he just couldn't put weight on that back leg. I think it was his left leg. So even though Abdullah was still making certain mistakes when coming in, basically he just overpowered Vasquez, like managed to knock him down again. And at that point, I think he might have tried to get up he knocked him down, and then Vasquez stayed on the ground. I don't think when he was trying to get, I think the ref just waved it off. Either that or he got up and then he got knocked with a couple other shots and the ref jumped in. It was one or the other. I can't quite remember how it ended, but I remembered that moment and I said, Abdullah Mason, he's one of the guys that I've hung my flag to in terms of like the new crop. And personally, I think it was good that he's suffered this like early in his career before he gets to that world stage. So now he's obviously got to know that it's not everyone you can just bowl over. Yes, you've got good offense and defense, but you need to work even more on your defensive tactics, because when you get to those higher levels, having a great offense isn't enough. You need to be able to switch between the two. Very aggressive fighter, but you know, that stuff needs to kind of be ingrained. That being said, like Abdullah Mason, I believe is what, 20, like 21, 22. He's very young. So there is plenty of time to fix any defensive lapses that he has. And I think, yeah, it's just a good thing that it's happened now. So you get to correct all that stuff before you get in there with the other contenders, with like the, you know, the seasoned world pros, etc. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. But yeah, it was a very entertaining fight to watch. Maybe it wasn't as entertaining for the people that manage his career, but you know, such is life. And again, it's a case where he was like 15-0, and his opponent, I think, was like 26-5, 26-4, something like that. So you're looking at a guy with, you know, 15 professional bouts, not a huge amateur career, but a little bit. But then also he's fighting someone with double the amount of professional fights. Now, yes, there's losses in there and whatnot, but you have to factor there's still 31 fights worth of experience. And that's something that you've always got to like be mindful of when you start doing the matchmaking, especially when you're still in your building phase of a fighter. Like, how much additional experience does this other person have? How much ambition does that person still have as well? So look, yeah, it was it was a crazy 2 rounds, but hella exciting. And that wasn't the only 2-round job we got, because Troy Isley aside, he took on Tyler Howard. It was a fairly ho-hum, not that great of a fight as such, but, you know, Troy Isley did what he needed to do, nullified Howard throughout the majority of the fight. Rai Salim, you know, again, another UD performance. There was a lot of UDs on the card. It was Abdullah, and then we got to Keyshawn Davis and Gustavo Lemos. Those were the two, you know, main highlight reels. And in Lemos and Keyshawn Davis, it was another 2nd round knockout. Keyshawn pretty much obliterated Lemos, who didn't try to jab his way into anything. It was everything was literally hooks. He was trying to hook from the left side, hook from the right side, but he was basically telegraphing everything, so you could see it coming from a mile away. And as he was trying to throw those shots, Keyshawn just ended up throwing in between, especially in that 2nd round. Like the 1st round, it was just comfortable, just measuring him, like catching him in between. But yeah, all the big shots just started landing in round 2. 3 very swift counters in between those shots. The 2nd one, you know, Lemos got up. He actually fell back down, but the referee carried on the count rather than deciding to wave it off. But he managed to get back up, said he wants to carry on. Keyshawn comes in again with a brutal 3-punch combo, sends him back down to the ground. Referee goes to wave it off and ends up tripping over him as he's falling over. Just a statement made, which obviously makes it look a little bit suspect on Richardson Hitchens as to how he basically went life and death with him over, I think it was a 10 or 12 round period when they had their fight as a final eliminator for the IBF at 140. And then, you know, this guy basically at 135, bearing in mind he didn't actually make the 135 limit, so there's no excuse of, oh, he was weight drained or whatnot. He actually came in at a heavier weight than he did when he fought Richardson Hitchens. Now, that's not to say that obviously that Keyshawn could beat Richardson because of that or whatever. Triangle theories don't necessarily work, but it just shows that one of the people that you know, people think that you went life and death and lost to, like, got beat up so badly by someone that actually he was such a smaller person, if we're being real. Remember, he came in 6 pounds over, then the following day, I think he was only allowed to rehydrate another 6 pounds at the, you know, the morning weigh-in, but then ended up coming in about like 155 at the end of the day. So £20 over at the time. Keyshawn, I assume, would have probably been about 147 maybe. So he still would have been the bigger guy in there. Yeah, just got dominated. So, Keyshawn's put his name on the map. I think that's 12-0 now with 8 KOs. He called out Gervonta Davis afterwards. Know that fight ain't gonna happen. Gervonta don't want to fight nobody. But it was very interesting just to kind of see how that whole thing played out. But yeah, look, Keyshawn did the business. He got his homecoming fight, and yeah, he definitely made the most of it. So congratulations to him. Now, if we move over to Saturday's offerings, Matchroom, we had the Two Kings card taking place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Obviously headlined by Boots Ennis and Bam Rodriguez. Now, this undercard was a lot more spirited and a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? It was a lot more, I would say, competitive. Like, realistically, like, Top Rank do very well at knowing how to match their A sides to the point where they build them incrementally till they get those tests, and they're never really tested until they're actually at that world, sort of that world level, whether it's a final eliminator or whether it's like a championship bout. Whereas at Matchroom, it's very much like, there is no building. You kind of get built maybe for the first 5 or 6 fights, and then after that it's deep water, like sink or swim. So there was a lot more competitive bouts theoretically here. But we had the debut of Zaquin Moses, who is Shakur Stevenson's younger cousin. And it's crazy. I heard him in the press conference, and I thought I was listening to Shakur. Like, they sound exactly alike. Like, the cadence of their voices, the pitch, the tone, the accent. Obviously, the accent's going to be the same, but everything it's like listening. You close your eyes, you think that Shakur Stevenson's talking. That's what's crazy. But looking at his fight, I didn't get to see all of it, but the little 4-rounder that he had, like, he looked sharp. You can see that sort of that New Jersey, that Camden, I guess I'm going to call it the Camden step, because like Shakur does something very similar. Even to a degree, Ray Ford also does something a little bit similar as well. So maybe that's just sort of one of the ways that they're taught out there, sort of like, sort of Camden and Jersey City and sort of those areas. But yeah, it was a pretty good one. Dennis Thompson and Ishmael Muhammad, I think they're two guys that Boots, like, he manages, or like they're from his gym. So they was on the Before the Bell segment. Didn't really get to see their fights, but from what I heard, they was decent enough. Obviously there was no Ernesto Mercado against Sriracha, just because he blew the weight by like 7 pounds, and they just decided they wouldn't have that one. So Ammo Williams ended up going onto the main card rather than headline in the Before the Bell segment, and he was facing Jean Garrido. And that was a very spirited fight. Like, the first round, Austin came with some really heavy shots down the pipe, and I thought, oh, this could end up being over early. But Garrido was tough. Like, he ate a lot of those shots quite comfortably, and then sort of like rounds 2, 3, 4, he actually came back, and he was, had a lot of resistance, and you thought, oh, okay, Austin maybe got to navigate this one. Let's see, like, if he's got any delayed sort of after effects from the fight with Hamza Shiraz. But eventually, no, he stayed composed, managed to, dig to that body, got those heavy-handed shots over the top, and in the 5th round just started, busting up Garrido to the point referee had to jump in. It was a pretty emphatic stoppage, and obviously it was a good fight to come back to after the knockout loss, to Hamza Shiraz. But then we get probably, I'm going to have to say, it's probably the shock of the weekend, if we're being honest, but Khalil Ko gets knocked out by Manuel Gallegos, or technically stopped. Can't really say he was knocked out. He was kind of on his feet or whatever. But Yeah, he got dropped 3 times. Once by a body, no, twice by body shots. In I think the first one was in the third round. The fourth round. Then in the seventh, and then I think in the eighth, and then finally in the ninth round, as it started, yeah, it dropped again. Now the thing is, in the first round, and you guys know I've always maintained I've liked Khalil Cole's style. I've watched him from amateurs. I thought he pretty much had all the goods. And in the first round, he was boxing brilliantly. He was lighting up Gallegos, slipping, using the jab, like using footwork, angles, got his distance, everything perfect, landing really, really heavy shots. But Gallegos was actually doing quite well with trying to just tap to that body, trying to throw a couple shots to the body here and there. Then in the second round, he caught Khalil Cole with a couple really good body shots, but Khalil also retaliated in kind. But for some reason, he decided rather than going for those jabs, he went high guard and just went into the pocket and said, like, almost like, oh, I'm going to slug it out with you. I'm just going to out tough you here. And it was like, well, why are you doing that when what was working for you perfectly was in the first round? And even though I still think he won the second, it was like, you've just allowed yourself to take damage that you didn't need to take. And then in the third round is when things started to kind of unravel, because he still did okay in the third, but he's still just in the pocket absorbing shots. Like, yeah, he's throwing his own back as well, but it's like almost like he's thinking, all right, I can just get you out of here with one punch. Like, maybe Diego Pacheco, maybe that fight gave him false security to think, okay, all I've got to do is just land that one perfect shot and you're done. And he laced him up with big shots in every single round, even the rounds he got dropped in. Sometimes in the rounds he got dropped in were the rounds he actually came back with the biggest shots. But by that point, he just had nothing left. The gas tank started to run out. Obviously, that goes to conditioning, but it also goes to the body work that Gallegos was employing from early on in the fight. So you've got to give him all of that credit. Like, he invested and he was putting water in that basement, flooding it from early. As you see, like, you know, ultimately, Khalil Cole drowned. One thing I want to give one piece of credit to Khalil Cole though. In the eighth round, the end of the eighth round, he goes back to his corner. The referee goes over there, goes, "You're not looking good. I don't like what I'm seeing." And the corner, he goes to the corner, "Look, I want to stop this." And the corner is like, and they ask the corner, "Do you want to stop it?" And then the corner asks Khalil, like, should we stop it?" And he said, "No, no, no, don't stop it. Don't stop it." I've got to give him credit for that, because ultimately he's basically saying, no, if this fight needs to end, like, I'm going out on my shield. Like, you're not, I'm not quitting in this fight. You're not going to have me quit. To be fair, at that moment, even when he said, no, don't stop it, they probably should have just said, you ain't got nothing left. Now, ref, like, it's over. And just to save him, even though technically they wouldn't have been saving him for much, because the fight ended about 10 seconds into the ninth round when he got flurried and then ended up dropping to his knee again, and the referee waved it off. But they already said, look, this is your last round. If we see anything different, we're just gonna call it off. So yeah, look, he suffers his first loss. I don't know what the preparation was like. I've got to assume that maybe he didn't train as hard as he needed to for this fight, probably thinking, well, he ain't been in the ring over 18 months or whatever it was, or like 15 months. And, he got stopped at super middle, so he ain't going to come up to light heavy and do something. He probably underestimated him, which you can't do. And, he's got there's the rebuild. I guess it depends on how much of a rebuild he'll get. Will he get an opportunity to basically save his Matchroom career, or will he get thrown to the side? How many fights is left on the contract? Because sometimes Eddie can be ruthless when someone doesn't doesn't go the way they need to, especially considering he did have that draw early on in his career, and the several times before that he missed weight and everything. But I don't know what he did and what he didn't do. So I could only speculate. One thing I will say, though, And this is something that I think Matchroom as a whole need to probably take advice from when it comes to like Top Rank and even Queensbury to a lesser extent. But you've really got to be careful of how you're matching your especially your up and coming stars. There's been several people in that Matchroom, and I'm not talking about, oh, like, how, you can't get them beat. Like, people can get beat, don't get me wrong, but there's been many times where you've got someone that's like less than 10 fights, or maybe they're 11, 12 fights, and you're putting them in there against someone that's got like 24, 25 fights. And realistically, if yeah, you might say, well, if you want to get to that next level, you should be beating this person, but they're still a novice pro. You gotta remember, like someone like Khalil Cole, this was his. I'm trying to think. This fight particularly was his only his second 10 rounder. Like, he's pretty much only done 8 rounders before this, and with a guy 9-0-1 at the time, so technically 10 fights, but you're putting him in there with someone with 23 fights beforehand. Do you see what I'm like? Sometimes I feel like they're matching people too aggressively. Yes, obviously you want to know that can they come through the fire, but certain times I feel like you need to still allow that level of progression that needs to take place, because these kind of hiccups don't happen at other companies when they're matching their top prospects. And usually it's because their prospects, they're being given enough that they can handle at that particular moment. Yeah, obviously you go 13, 14, maybe 15-0, then now you start, okay, now you got to start really going through the fire. But those first 10 to 15 fights realistically should be the building blocks. Couple tests here and there, but they shouldn't be quote unquote 50-50s or fights where you would expect someone to, bear in mind, he was 9-0-1 facing someone that had only lost 2 fights. They'd won 21 fights and lost 2. That's still a level of experience he hasn't had yet. So that's one thing I'll say. But again, that doesn't absolve Khalil from any shortcomings. Again, I don't know what he did or didn't do, so I'm just going off of what I saw. In that first round, he looked tremendous. The second round, he was employing a game plan which he shouldn't have. Maybe he thought, oh, I can get this guy out of here, because he was lighting him up with some really, really hard shots. He wobbled him a couple of times in those early rounds, and even some of the later rounds he wobbled him. But yeah, I'd like to see him maybe get a retry, but I don't know what happens next. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, not a great night for him. However, it was a very good night for Ray Ford on his return after his very, very controversial loss to Nick Ball, down at 126 pounds, up at 130. And he was taking on Orlando Gonzalez, who, after I think the first 6 rounds, realized that this fight was not going to go his way, and he pretty much was just trying to kind of survive after that, which I don't blame him for. He wanted to make the 10-round distance. He probably thought he could win initially, but then quickly learned that weren't going to happen. And as such, he got brutally knocked down in the second round, to the point I'm surprised he even got up. I'm surprised he made the count. And I think the only reason he did make the count is because the referee was more concerned with stopping Ray Ford from doing his little shimmy and shake after the knockdown, and making sure he was in the corner. So I feel like Gonzalez probably got another 5 or 6 seconds worth of time of recovery just before the referee started initiating the count, which was kind of slow as well, to be fair. But it's the referee's count, he gets to pick. But credit to Gonzalez for making it through the second, and then making it through the rest of the rounds up to the 8th when he got knocked down again. But he managed to run, get on his bike, stay away, stay hidden, and sort of stay behind his guard for the next 2 rounds until he saw out the final bell. Even to the point where Ray Ford was like stomping on the 10th round, like, come in the center of the ring. You said you want to fight, let's fight. and he didn't. Yeah, he clearly didn't want to fight at that point. But yeah, but no, Ray Ford's back. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next. I know that I think he wants to fight Sugar Nunes for the vacant IBF title, which is likely to be vacated by Andy Anthony Kakache, from what I've been told. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Jesse Bam Rodriguez against Pedro Guevara. Now, I thought that this fight would go late. I thought that Bam would win quite comfortably, like a dominant points victory, because Guevara's never been sort of knocked out before. And I just felt that he would sort of dominate, possibly get late stoppage, but, you know, he would just win it, you know, comfortably, but would have to stay switched on. Well, he decided to rip up that script. Bam Rodriguez, 3rd round knockout. Yeah, there's not even much really to say. Like, Bam dominated from start to finish. He set up the right punches, caught the right, you know, set the right tempo. Bam, as they say, good night. And he's, you know what, he's pushing towards them unifications. Everyone keeps talking, you jump up to bantamweight, go try and see if you can get Inoue to do a catch weight at bantamweight. Won't happen. Inoue is not coming back down to 118. He might not even stay at 122 for much longer. But, you know, if you want to, you know, they've got the Chocolatito fight, which they're looking at potentially. Personally, I don't want to see it. But if it does happen, I will watch. You know, Chocolatito has been one of my favorites for years. But I know that he is, you know, he's the last of this quote unquote 4 kings that Bam could now take out, which I don't really want to see happen. Especially as I feel like he was robbed twice against Estrada. So yeah, but if it needs to happen, it needs to happen. Personally, though, there's unifications to be made at Superfly. Yeah, okay, they're not quote unquote marquee names, but make the unifications happen. After that, then you can go to bantamweight, and if anything, you go bantamweight. Junto Nakatani is up there, so you need to make sure that you try to finish that work before you start jumping up looking at Inoue and all the others. And there's other champions up at bantamweight for you to take on. But yeah, look, great performance by Bam Rodriguez on the East Coast, and now he's probably got 10,000 more fans of people that was in attendance, and they're probably happy that he didn't have them sort of just sitting around waiting for the main event to take place. Like, he you know, he finished business quite early, and now he's probably made more fans over there, so big ups to him. Then main event, Jaron Ennis against Karen Chikadzian, part 2. I got this one wrong in the sense that I thought that Ennis would have got him out of there based on, you know, the first fight. There was a lot of movement from Karen Chikadzian, didn't really do much. So I thought on this one, he said he was coming to fight, which I thought would give Ennis a lot more opportunities to get those stoppages. Now he did manage to knock him down in the 5th round, but he was loading up on punches too much. He wasn't trying to break Chikadzian down. He just kept trying to load up and just almost like do the highlight reel knockout thing, and that was ended up getting him caught. He ended up getting caught a lot. Now, I remember one time, I think Jamie from Punch Perfect said like his defense is like really, really good, and he only ever gets caught ultimately like if he wants to get caught to like set you up. And he said this a few years ago, so you know, obviously he can change his mind now, but I've never thought that. I've always thought that his defense was quite leaky, but he was just so much bigger than his opponents, he didn't really bother him. As he starts going up in weight, especially, like his size advantage over a lot of his opponents is not going to be as pronounced. So he's going to have to either really tighten up on his defense or be less willing to just sit in the pocket and trade with people. Because if you're getting landed on and you know, landed on clean by someone like Chikadzian, who's not even that big of a puncher, and even to a lesser extent, the same thing happened with David Avanesian, who obviously, yeah, took it on short notice, but you know, he still was decent-ish in terms of power. Like, you're gonna come a cropper later on down the line, because there's only so much resistance your body, your chin can have. So yeah, he's really got to tighten up on the defense, and maybe he's got to stop looking to be so offensively strong look on that defense and just look to break people down slowly. But yeah, he was loading up, just looking for big shots, ultimately didn't get the stoppage, which I guess is a bit of an indictment on him and obviously what he wanted to do, and the fact of almost you say like, well, you actually won the first fight much better than you won the second. So someone could look and say, well, are you regressing? Is this regression now? Are you not the guy that we thought you were, kind of thing? Now, I don't believe that to be the case. I think he's a talent, but I've seen flaws and I've seen issues in Ennis from early, like from about 5, 6, 7 fights ago, and there are things that haven't been addressed. And I think part of that is probably because he's not fighting the level of opposition he needs to be fighting to address them. That is part of it, and that wasn't his fault. But I feel like he's gotten a bit too comfortable in certain things. I definitely think he trains hard, but I don't think his training is improved. I don't think his technique, I don't think the stuff that he's done in training has changed and improved. He's probably more focused on just doing hard sparring than really honing technique, honing that defense, like doing a lot of technical sparring, doing a lot of defensive sparring just to get that side of his game correct. But look, I mean, look, he won the fight. It was a clear victory. So it's not like, oh, this is, anything to, but, he went from 12-0 scorecards in the last fight across the board to like, I think 117, 110, and then 116, 109 for the other two. So, he lost rounds. He lost 4 rounds and 3 rounds in this fight compared to the last one, which is, like I said, it's not, I guess it's not the route and the way he needs to be going. But the only way we can tell now is the next test, which should be hopefully either a unification or quote unquote a marquee name. That's where we can see, are there any improvements, or is this just who you are and we just got to go along for the ride until the wheels fall off the vehicle? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, look, that's pretty much everything that I remember from the weekend. I'm sure there's maybe some bits and pieces I've forgotten. But yeah, leave any of your comments down below on the stuff that you saw, anything that you liked, didn't like, talking points, and I'll be happy to address them in the comments. Obviously, we've got more live streams happening this week, probably Tuesday, Wednesday. Definitely be some episodes will be out as well. We're going to carry those on, more content coming. I'm going to try and see if I can get someone on to do a couple interviews over Zoom this week as well. And there might be a couple press conferences happening, not this week, but next week. So I'm going to see if I can reach out to some people for that as well. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and I will catch you on the next video. But until then, peace.